There is a version of energy most of us were taught to respect. It is loud. It is driven. It announces itself before it enters the room. It looks like ambition. It sounds like certainty. It feels like force. And for a while, it works. You can build a career with it. You can win arguments with it. You can motivate yourself with it. You can even inspire others with it. But underneath that kind of energy, there is almost always someone being carried. An image, a role, a version of you that must not fail. And maintaining that version requires constant effort. You must stay impressive. You must stay sharp. You must stay ahead. You must stay relevant. If you slow down, it feels dangerous. If you make a mistake, it feels personal. If you're overlooked, it feels like a threat. So the energy stays tense, and tension eventually burns. That's why so many driven people collapse. Why momentum turns into exhaustion. Why passion becomes pressure. Because ego energy is expensive. It spends itself constantly protecting something. But there is another kind of energy. It is quieter, but stronger. Steadier, but more powerful. Less dramatic, but more alive. It does not come from trying to become someone. It comes from not resisting what is already moving. You felt it before. Maybe in a game when thinking dropped away and your body just reacted. Maybe in a hard conversation when you stopped rehearsing and just spoke. Maybe when building something late at night, not for applause, but because continuing felt natural. In those moments, energy didn't feel forced. It felt clean. There was movement, but no inner pushing. There was clarity, but no image to defend. There was strength, but no posture. That is energy without ego, and it changes everything. When ego runs your energy, you constantly check yourself. Am I doing enough? Am I ahead? Do I look competent? What do they think of me? Is this impressive? Is this worth it? Every one of those thoughts takes fuel. It's like driving with the emergency brake slightly engaged. You can still move, but everything costs more. And because it costs more, you need more motivation. So you chase inspiration. You look for the next idea. You consume content to get fired up. You tell yourself bigger stories to keep going. But what if energy doesn't need to be manufactured? What if it's already there, buried under self-maintenance? When ego softens, you stop performing for an invisible audience. You stop narrating your own life. And when narration drops, responsiveness increases. Your body becomes efficient again. You don't need a speech to start. You don't need the perfect mood. You don't need certainty. You move because movement is needed. That's grounded power. Think about work. When ego runs your work, everything becomes personal. A lost deal feels like you lost value. A slow month feels like you are falling behind in life. A competitor's success feels like your failure. So energy becomes defensive. You try harder not because it's needed, but because your identity is involved. But when ego loosens, work becomes cleaner. You can pursue income without turning money into proof. You can build something without needing it to define you. You can experiment without fearing what it says about you. Energy increases not because you are trying to be powerful, but because nothing inside is being protected. Protection consumes energy. Participation restores it. This doesn't mean you become passive. In fact, the opposite happens. When ego isn't in the way, you act faster. There's no committee meeting in your head. You don't rehearse every sentence. You don't imagine 10 outcomes before sending a message. You don't stall while waiting to feel confident. Confidence becomes irrelevant. Action happens. And surprisingly, it is often more precise. Because ego isn't distorting perception. When ego runs energy, you see through filters. How does this affect me? How does this position me? What will they think? When ego softens, you see the situation directly. What is needed? What is true? What moves this forward? That kind of clarity is powerful. It's not aggressive. It's not loud, but it's unmistakable. People feel it. They trust it because it isn't trying to dominate. It's simply aligned. There is a fear that arises when we talk about dropping ego from energy. People worry. If I don't push myself, won't I become lazy? If I don't compete, won't I fall behind? If I don't care about image, won't I lose drive? But look closely. How much of your exhaustion came from caring about image? How much stress came from trying to look successful? How much tension came from proving something? Ego energy feels like fuel, but it's often friction. Real drive doesn't disappear when ego softens. It refines. Instead of, I need to win, it becomes, this needs to be done. Instead of, I must succeed. It becomes, let's build this well. Instead of, I can't fail, it becomes, if it fails, we adjust. Notice the difference. The second version has more stamina because it doesn't collapse when outcomes shift. Energy without ego is not detached. It is deeply engaged. You care. You show up. You try. You build. But you are not building yourself through it. And that changes the emotional weight. Imagine having a difficult conversation. With ego, you prepare your defenses. You rehearse comebacks. You anticipate attack. You try to maintain control. Energy spikes. Your body tightens. Your voice sharpens. With grounded power, you still speak clearly. You still draw boundaries. You still hold your position. But there is no inner aggression. You are not protecting an image. You are not trying to win. You are simply responding. And that makes you stronger, because strength without tension is stable. Strength with ego is brittle. It cracks under pressure. Strength without ego bends and continues. Let's talk about desire. Desire has been misunderstood. Some say eliminate it. Some say amplify it. But desire itself is neutral. The problem is identity wrapped around desire. I want this becomes, I need this to validate me. And suddenly desire is heavy. When ego softens, desire becomes clean. You can want something without clinging. You can pursue something without desperation. You can enjoy ambition without anxiety. You might want financial growth. You might want creative expression. You might want momentum again. That's fine. Just don't become the one who must have it. When the must drops, energy stabilizes. You move toward goals without shrinking when they move away. That is freedom in motion. Look at your body when ego runs energy. Shoulders tight. Jaw set. Breathing shallow. Thoughts racing. Now imagine acting without that internal tension. Same task. Same challenge. Different inner state. Breathing steady. Vision clear. Body responsive. This isn't mystical. It's mechanical. When you stop protecting identity, the nervous system relaxes. When the nervous system relaxes, performance improves. Athletes call it flow. Psychologists call it regulation. Artists call it being in the zone. But at its core, it's simple. Energy is no longer being wasted on self-defense. This kind of energy shows up in parenting. When ego is involved, every mistake feels like a reflection. Every behavior feels like judgment. Every outcome feels like a report card. You try to parent perfectly. You try to look competent. You try to manage perception. And that drains you. When ego softens, parenting becomes participation. You guide. You correct. You protect. You teach. But you are not trying to prove you are a good parent. You are simply responding to what is in front of you. And that steadiness creates safety. Children feel when energy is defensive. They also feel when it is grounded. Grounded energy doesn't overreact. It doesn't collapse. It doesn't escalate unnecessarily. It stays. And staying is powerful. The same applies to leadership. Leadership without ego is rare and obvious when you see it. It does not dominate. It does not demand admiration. It does not inflate itself. It moves decisions forward. It clarifies direction. It absorbs pressure without amplifying it. When ego runs leadership, teams feel tension. They feel image maintenance. They feel instability beneath confidence. When grounded power leads, teams feel steadiness. Because decisions are not about protecting position, they are about moving the system. That difference changes outcomes. There is also something beautiful about energy without ego and creativity. When ego drives creativity, you create for validation. You create to impress. You create to compete. And then you compare. And then you doubt. And then you stall. When ego softens, creativity becomes exploration. You build because building feels alive. You write because expression moves through you. You experiment because curiosity is present. You are not measuring yourself constantly. You are participating. Ironically, the work often improves. Because it's not tight. It's honest. Let's address the subtle trap. Sometimes after deep inner work, people become quiet, but also flat. They let go of ego, but also lose fire. That isn't grounded power. That's withdrawal. Season 8 is not about becoming neutral. It's about becoming alive without becoming someone. There is force in you. There is intelligence in you. There is capacity in you. But it does not need a personal storyline. Energy without ego is not soft in a weak way. It is soft like a coiled spring. Stable. Ready. Unthreatened. It does not flare up unnecessarily. But when movement is required, it moves fully. That's what sustainable momentum feels like. You don't need to become louder. You don't need to become more intense. You don't need to become someone else. You simply need to stop carrying someone while you act. Let go of the internal representative. Let go of the inner commentator. Let go of the version of you trying to be impressive. And watch what happens. Energy returns. Not explosive, not dramatic, but steady. You wake up and move. You decide and act. You speak and continue. There is less hesitation, less rehearsal, less fatigue, because nothing inside is bracing against life. You may still feel fear. That's fine. Fear doesn't mean ego is running. Fear is information. Fear is sensation. Fear is part of being human. The difference is this. With ego, fear becomes identity. I am failing. I am not enough. I am behind. Without ego, fear becomes movement. Heart beating, adrenaline rising, attention sharpening. And then you act anyway. Not recklessly, not dramatically, but cleanly. This is the beginning of Season 8. Not collapse, not dissolution, but grounded force. The kind of energy that can build a business, repair a relationship, start something new, continue something difficult, without turning any of it into self-definition. You are allowed to be powerful. You are allowed to want. You are allowed to build. You are allowed to move forward. Just don't turn it into who you are. Let it be what you are doing. That is lighter. That is stronger. That lasts longer. Energy without ego. And from here, momentum becomes sustainable. If this episode brought something steady back into you, stay with the season. Season 8 is about being fully alive without carrying a version of yourself while you do it. If you want to go deeper, the full book series is linked below. And if you know someone who is exhausted from pushing too hard, send this to them. Sometimes what we need isn't more motivation. It's less self-protection. We continue in episode 2.